Hello, hello. This is Robert Morales with RCO Network. So this is CEO Radio. We're going to be coming at you live here on Facebook. We're also plugged in on YouTube and Facebook, Twitch. If you want to join us on Twitch, we just signed up for Twitch. So every week we're going to be bringing you this show. It's Health and Wellness called The Inner Journey with my very special guest, Miss Mary Van Alstyne.
Hello, hello.
Hello. There it goes. I love that kind of like intro. Look at that. Lots of people loving you.
I feel
Everybody
very
loves you
special.
out there, Miss
Thank you.
Miss Van Alstyne. So, if you're on Facebook right now, hit likes and loves because we love those heart emojis. Also, too, if you're watching us on YouTube, if you can hit the like button and subscribe to our channel, we're going to be bringing you this show every week, along with other topics and things that bring us various things about life, and especially Tuesday with Miss Van Alstyne. Isn't that right, Miss Van Alstyne?
How am I? I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Sort
Pretty
of. It's so funny. Like as we got onto this show, just before we got here, we're talking about just things that are bothering us and things that we go through as normal humans. But as soon as we click on this show, we're back to like, oh shit, we have to present ourselves.
I'm doing great.
Oh yeah. Everything's fine. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful. And it's also amusing too because like, it's not really it's us, but it's not really us.
Exactly.
Because if you guys were here before we got on the show today, would have heard a very different conversation. And I said, let's just go on and talk about it. And that's it's so weird to be human, I think. Because we get into these modes where things are going fine and we pretend everything's okay. I think the whole design of social media is just, contoured to this belief that we need to project ourselves as perfect or okay, or things are just great and everybody's on vacation, and you sit there and you're watching, Facebook or YouTube and you're like, oh, that's not me. I need to be there. And it filters in your mind and just sticks there, lingers there sometimes. And you're like, am I the only one that feels this? And it gets to you because there's so many people on Facebook and there's so many things that you're watching and seeing that everything's great and everything's grand. And you have these moments where you're alone and sometimes depressed and sometimes just not feeling it, and that's what we're talking about before you got here, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was a little bit funny how I was just talking about authenticity and being able to be authentic and, being okay with being a little bit down, sometimes. Yeah. And the minute you ask how I'm doing great, So
yeah, as soon as we go on, it's just like
programmed in there that we have to look a certain way for people. We have to present ourselves a certain way, and that it's not okay to not be okay,
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird. Even if you're like passing along, hey, how you doing? Oh, good. How are you doing? I've gotten in the mode where I've said fair. I've said, I'm like, oh, I'm okay. And it throws people off so much. It's like, well, you're not okay? Yeah. And just in passing. And, coming on the show today was more like to talk about those inner feelings and not being real, or as real fake, not real.
Authentic.
Being authentic.
Yeah.
and how tough it is and how challenging it is just to want to walk into a store with, sweats on and whatever and not give a shit, honestly, at the end of the day. And to go to somebody and when somebody asks you how you doing, you're like, you know what, today I feel like hell. Mm-hmm. And I'm not doing well. And I wish things were better for me. So thank you. Because that's how I was last week.
Yeah.
You should have seen, like I was texting Mary last week and I told her I'm in this spot where like I had this really awesome month. I had this really like my commissions, contracts, everything was going so well last month. And then I get to this point where, I'm going to go get lunch and it hits me and like, one comment, one transaction doesn't go well. And it's just like starts like caving in and it's just one thing, or maybe a combination of things that really puts you in a place where it's just like, I don't feel like myself. Mm-hmm. And just off.
Seems like those moments where we get alone, we start to hear the inner voice and what the inner voice is really saying. And maybe it is that you're low and you're looking, and what I tend to do is look at all these outside things to bring me joy, to elevate my mood, to, make me happy on an outward level. And once that's all gone for a moment and you have this moment of stillness, that's when sometimes it hits what's really going on inside your head. What are the thoughts you're really having in there? You know, they're not masked anymore.
Well, it's scary because you don't want to admit that, you know, you feel like a failure. Even though, again, I had a very successful month last month. I had a moment where I felt like a failure wasn't good enough. And I go, who do you go tell? You know, you want to, like, the first inclination is to tell who you're dating or who you're with or who you're married to, but then they got their own shit going on. And then you start conceding to those thoughts because it's like, well, you know, they had a bad day and then they had a, you know, and then this happened to them. And it's like, well, how can I bring all this to them when they already had a bad day? Who do I talk to and where do I go?
Yeah. I think just like most things, the work starts with us, right? And then we can learn, I've over the years learned some tools and techniques to really get me to that place of bringing me back to my true self and what's really going on with me. Taking out all of the distractions and being able to sit in stillness and do these things to bring myself really back up to that level of happiness on the inside, because without that, I'm just masking it with everything else that I'm attempting to do. So
well, that's
it's the inward journey.
That's kind of like meditation, right? I've never really been inclined to meditation because my mind is so, like, my mind thinks too much. I can't even, like, you're supposed to focus on your breathing and be in a solemn place and resonate that vibration in you. And it's just like my mind goes. And honestly, I'd rather do something else other than meditate, you know, fixing something or playing music. I mean, I play music too. And that, I guess, that's my kind of replacement of meditation. But
it's definitely a form of meditation, and yet also a distraction at the same time because you're doing something. Yeah. And I think that people have this misconception of meditation where you have to clear all the thoughts out of your head and become this Zen, you know, creature with no thoughts, blank stillness, and that drives people nuts. And the reason why I believe it drives us nuts is because that's when we get to hear those thoughts that are happening through our head. Yeah. So what I've learned in doing some of the meditation techniques that I've learned, it's not really about getting to that place of nothingness with thought. It's about gently letting thoughts go through without judgment, letting the thoughts pass through. You know, and there are several guided meditations that you can do as well that are a little bit easier to follow along with at first until you get into the deeper techniques. But meditation really is, it does freak people out, right? Because it's like, I don't want to hear my own thoughts. I don't want to sit still. I want to do something and distract myself, right? That's kind of.
Have you felt like you've always been that one person that everybody goes to?
Yes, especially in the last few years since I've been doing so much inner work. People can see it when you have an inner peace. Yep. And they tend to go towards the people. And we're very caring people by nature, you know. We're very outgoing, caring, genuine people, I think, that when someone does come to me and says, yeah, how you doing today? Oh, I'm doing really bad, shitty. I genuinely want to hear what's going on with them. So I think that invites people to want to come to me for things.
Yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy, right? If somebody is doing okay, you're like, oh, you're very dismissive. But then if they're in a state of turmoil, you get very attentive, you know, and I think that's the natural side of community and who we are as a species. We're very communal, you know, and it's very challenging and very difficult for us to be alone. And in my journey and my practices, it's hard for me to be alone, even though I'm very mindful, you know. It's so hard just to not be able to reach out to somebody and say, hey, you know, you're okay. You know, there's moments here. I'm stuck in the back. I'm honestly way in the back of this office, and I'm like in the dungeon area over here. And I yearn for people to walk by and say something at times. I can hear footsteps and stuff, and I have to distract myself. I keep the camera on, or I keep the YouTube playing, or whatever, just to have noise, to have movement, because I yearn for people just to give me quote unquote attention. Mm-hmm. Why do I need that? I'm busy. I got so much. You should see all this shit I have here to do, you know. And it's you get to a point sometimes where you're just so isolated, and this could be a metaphor for just somebody in their mind. Get so isolated from people and situations and things that, you know, you sometimes want to cause problems, which is I think a lot of people's dilemma. You know, they don't intend to. I think everybody gets in a relationship saying, you know, I want the perfect man. I want the perfect woman who's very mindful, very calm. And is no problems, there's nothing there. But then, you know, we're the culprit and causes the problems when everything's fine. Mm-hmm. which I find very interesting too. And I did that in my previous marriage too. I would sometimes instigate problems just to check in to make sure the other person is still with me. Which is a whole other problem to have too. But
yeah, that's like a whole nother topic of these internal paradigms that we have, the way that we see the world and how we expect the world to show up for us. Therefore, if we're used to the world being a hostile place, we're used to, maybe we have a rough childhood, we grow up and we go into these relationships, and if it's too calm, we're going to start stuff, right? Because we feel like that's normal. That is love. That is the validation that I need from the outside. So that's a whole nother topic, I think. But
oh boy. Well, I'm here with Miss Mary Van Alstyne, my esteemed co-host on the Inner Journey, and we're bringing to you a different show. We want to have a place, a format where we can talk about openly and freely our emotions and kind of where we're at in a more reflective and maybe a dissecting kind of way, without getting too emotional. Because I tend to be emotional, period. But I try not to be over emotional where I'm like weeping and crying and just like obliterated because of whatever is going on. I really try to maintain that sense of balance and that focus. But shit, sometimes it hits me. It hits me when I've been on my own. I've been doing my own business for almost 8 years now. And you get to those points, where you have success, and I feel very successful. If I take a step back away from myself and reflect upon where I started to where I'm at now, I feel very successful, especially with what I have. And it has more to do with my own growth rather than the things that are in front of me or presenting in front of me. But I still have those freaking moments where it I don't feel worth it. And it's not depression. I mean, I've been in depression. So when I was, in my marriage and that was ending and my career was ending with child welfare services, I was in a very vulnerable state where I just wanted to kind of end things. And that was a challenge to admit then. It's okay now because I don't feel that way. But you get those kind of ghosts in your head, those reminiscent things like, fuck, I don't feel like I'm worth it. And then you start seeking out people or things to kind of affirm you're okay. And I think that's why you have a good friend you can reach out to and be like, hey, I feel like shit right now. Yeah. I can't maintain my thing. How you doing, Mary? Oh, I feel like shit too.
Well, and I think it's great to have those people that you can reach out to, and especially the people that offer you the solutions that are going to move you back into the right direction. The other thing I was really thinking about is the more that we're willing to show that blah and tell people we feel like shit when we feel like shit, it gives others the permission to not be okay all the time. It's like our willingness to look bad or look real ends up making us look really good, So I say, do it. Do the cry. I mean, I've broken down crying so many times and been so embarrassed and had people come up to me telling me how much they appreciated that vulnerability because it made them realize that it's okay. We all feel these ways. Every single one of us, they called it there's the Imposter Syndrome. Even the most successful people in the world still have these lingering feelings. And so what I have really, what I've really realized is when I'm in this state that I've been in, that we were talking about before we turned on, is that I've gotten away from gratitude. I've gotten out of a beingness of gratitude and being grateful. And, they say when you're in depression and when you're upset, when you're in fear, any of the negative emotions, quote unquote negative emotions, because none of them are negative really, right, is that we're either living in the future or we're living in the past. We're not living in the precious now. You know? And then we got to really stop and take a look at what are the thoughts that we're having? What are the questions that we're asking ourselves in our heads? And that's where being still and stopping all the doing is very important, because then we can really take a look at what's happening for us internally.
And I think for all of us, and I think more in the aggregate than, some other people, there's the primal you and the cerebral you. The primal you is just instinctual, frustrated, angry, because again, talking about childhood, that's how we innately learned how to get things we want. We stomp and storm like crying, and somebody responded at some point and responded enough to where it became somewhat innate. Again, when somebody cuts you off or somebody makes their way in line when they're not supposed to, it's like it's automatic. Like what the fuck? I've been waiting here just as long as everybody else, and you cut in front of me, or you're just driving and they cut in front of you. It's just that innate reaction, that is the primal you. That's how you grew up. And then the cerebral you is like, oh, well, it's just traffic, whatever. You know, this person's just an a-hole, whatever. You know, how do you get to that? How do you negotiate that part? You know, and it takes mindfulness, and it takes definitely time. And, you know, I don't know how to coach that or teach that unless somebody wants to be there. And I think there's so many people that want to be there, just don't know how. Or a place to go, like us. You can come talk to us. So if you leave your comments or questions, we can get back to that.
Absolutely. So yeah, we I think that part of the problem is that we try to deny what they call, in some of the teachings that I've learned, the shadow side of ourselves. We have that primal part of ourselves that's like, you know, someone does something, we want to shove them out a window for a second, and we tell ourselves that it's bad.
There's a lot of people like that.
That you want to shove out a window?
At times, yeah.
But we all have that. We all have that, and I think it's just like if you look at a little kid that's throwing a fit, if you're able to look at that little kid and not correct them, not tell them what they're doing is wrong. We've learned that all these things that we think and feel are wrong, and I think that's a big part of the problem out there, is that we need to embrace that shadow, that dark side of ourselves, and realize that, yes, it's just a fleeting thought. Oh my gosh, that's kind of funny that I had that thought, that I wanted to shove him out the window, right? Instead of making ourselves shame. It all boils down to shame. Are we shaming ourselves about all these different thoughts and feelings that we have, instead of allowing it to bubble up, go through, and go, oh, that was kind of a funny thought. Or,
well, isn't it weird? It'd be gratifying if we could do it and get away with it.
I don't know that we would actually do it.
No, don't do it.
Don't do it. We're not saying to go shove someone out a window.
Well, unless you do, I mean, let me know how you got away with it. Just kidding. No, but I think we, at least for me, I don't know, you know, again, bringing this show together, I wanted to have a format where we can kind of dissect emotions and dissect where we're at and who we are as people. And it, like I said, it's a challenge for us to, well, it's always been until I met Mary, because now she's my friend. They're a little hard, yeah. But to have somebody where you can actually talk about these things and feel okay, and even more so, you know, as we kind of were in the last like 10 minutes or so of the show today, you know, is there a gender gap? I mean, you talk about crying it out, letting it all out. I mean, I don't feel inclined. Like there are times where it just you can't take it. You know, I got to a point right after my divorce where I was just sitting in the car. I was at the store and I was grabbing some stuff, put it in the car, and I guess I was holding it back so much it just like came out, and I couldn't stop crying, and it was scary because I had never been in that state before, and that's when I knew it was significant. I just could not stop crying, and to the point where I never went to my mom about things. I was always kind of her person that she went to. It got to the point where like I called my counselor because I was going to counseling. I do recommend that for everybody. Everybody needs freaking counseling. Everybody needs somebody supportive that's kind of separated from their own family and own biases. That's one thing. But I reached out to my counselor. I reached out to, I think, one other friend at the time, and I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And then I called my mom. And I am so thankful for that situation because that got me on the road to understanding why I have so many pent-up anger, pent-up aggression. And it all goes back to my parents, but it's not their fault either, you know? And it's so easy to kind of point the finger and blame. And, you know, she probably won't like the fact that, you know, I'm talking about it, but it is what it is. It's my life, you know? And it's so easy to point the finger to other people and point to old situations, talk about the past. But when your thoughts linger there and you're feeling depressed and you're not being able to pull away from it, that is significant. I think that is significant in anybody's life and a point of reflection where you need help. You need help outside yourself, and to find somebody, you know, that's willing to kind of take that path without burdening those emotions, because you'll find plenty of people out there who will burden that emotion for you and then use that to turn it like, that was there for you and you weren't here for me. There are so many people out there like that too, that selfishly want something out of you. And it's that's why I think counseling helps. I mean, it's pretty negotiable. You give them money, they sit and listen to all your shit, but you're able to process. And I think that's the biggest benefit, is to reflect and process, just like anything else, like it's a job.
Yeah, and I agree with that as far as counseling with the right counselors and with the right therapy styles. A lot of them tend to drudge up the past, and then you end up living there and going there and staying a victim to it for a long time. And I think the real work is going inward and taking a look at ourselves. Where are we responsible? What you were talking about you know, pointing the finger out, that's that victim kind of victim mentality. It's their fault, right? When we look at it, it's no matter what, all that's happened has happened to us, and we get the opportunity to even hang on to that thing and let it give us an excuse to behave a certain way or feel a certain way, or we can go in and take a look at, like, it's like digging. We're like digging now, you know, going to different, I'm a big believer in personal growth. Personal growth has got me to where I am, you know, as far as I have come, which is a really long way. And that's all about taking self-responsibility for these things, and that we do create our own reality. We have the option to hang on to these things in the past or learn some technique to turn them around into a growing experience, into something that we can now pivot from and move forward into our lives, you know, and take charge of ourselves once again. So
yeah, and as you guys have questions or comments, go ahead and put those in there. We're kind of watching things. Again, this is a new show, The Inner Journey. So this is episode number 2, and we're kind of taking things by the reins, and we're letting the show kind of develop on its own, but I think it's kind of calling to me, and as well as calling to Mary. We kind of talked about that too, as a format, as a place. And we're only going to be on for like 20, 30 minutes a week, but I think for us it's significant because we're able to share that, and when we're seeing that we're connecting with other people and they're going through the same things too, it's kind of gratifying to know that, hey, we're really not alone in this whole thing. You know, so for the last segment of the show, because we're running, you know, about 10 minutes away, what can we do from this point on? Now that we realize, do you feel better, by the way?
I do actually feel better. See? Yes.
I have that effect on people. I have that effect on everybody. Yes. I must say. So I'm giving myself a pat on the back.
You deserve it.
Just kidding. No, but I that's the one thing I've always wanted to do, and I think that I'm motivated by my own. Like I was saying earlier, I'm motivated by my own disappointment, and wanting to comfort others and wanting to give back. It's just always been very visceral for me, and I do it in my writing. I do it in the music, because you don't necessarily do things for yourself. You do them for other people. I don't play music so I can, you know, necessarily play for myself. I'm practicing and playing so that I can play in front of somebody else, and it's so gratifying. I will tell you, like, whenever I go to a house party and I'm playing music and everybody's drunk and they don't really hear how bad I am, when I'm over there playing music in front of a group of people and they're singing along, that is the best feeling in the world. Even though I am not the best singer or the best player, that's the best feeling in the world. And I do these things again, and even like this room, and on all my work is always to kind of be supportive of somebody else, because I know that I feel good when they feel good. And then I don't know what that is for you, or kind of, is there ways that people can kind of get there to where, you know, we're at? Because we're not, I will say, we're not whole people either.
We're working on it. We're all works in progress.
Well, that's the platform of the show too.
Yes.
But last week I felt like shit. You know, Mary felt a little like shit today, and we're okay to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm going to do, if I could share,
absolutely,
a little technique
this
that
is your
I've learned. So I had my son was in he was in juvie back in the day, and I showed up to him one day, and he was very low. I mean, just low. And I asked him if he would do something simple for me and just commit to doing this one thing for 1 week until I came to visit him again. Yeah. And that was to write a list of 5 things every day that you're grateful for. And he begrudgingly, he accepted that, and he committed to do that. And I saw him 1 week later, and he was a completely different human being. And ever since I saw the evidence of that in him, because this was something I'd brand new learned at the time, and I'm like, let me throw this out there for him. Every time I get feeling like crap, like shit, like I was today, I realize I've gotten off of that. If you're living in gratitude, there is no fear, there is no depression, there is no sadness. If you're living in gratitude, there just can't exist. So
where's your 5 words today?
My 5 words?
What are I'm calling her out right now. I want Mary to say 5 words that make her uniquely and gratefully her, because I appreciate her, but I want her to find those words out herself.
Wow. So what I'm grateful for about me.
Yeah.
Well, I am authentic for the most part, other than, you know, once in a while.
Except when we start the show.
I am very accepting of others, very non-judgmental and accepting. Funny, most of the time, very funny. I do have a very compassionate side. I can see I've been given a gift to be able to see the little kid inside of every person. So that that gives me the ability to have a level of compassion that a lot of people don't have. How many is that? 3, 4?
I was getting caught up. I was just I think that was number 4 or 5.
4, okay. And I can keep going. And I am a wonderful mother. I love my family a lot. And what I do is I put a lot of attention and energy into making sure that they have the right mindset to succeed in life, not just the educational school work, memorized to pass a test, but real tools for them to go out into the world and be able to take charge of their own reality. So
perfect.
How about you? Let's get quick 5 things.
Quick! Oh, look at that! The end of the show. Hey, we're gonna be ending the show now. No, I guess I'm stuck with it. Yeah, I called you out. You can call me out too. So 5 things. I innately have an ability to connect with people. And sometimes I'm surprised at that too. I don't. People just kind of open up and they feel comfortable, and so I'm grateful for that. I think I'm funny.
Yes.
Sometimes I am. Yeah, depends on who you are. I've learned to appreciate my laugh, and before I used to kind of like make fun of it and not like it so much. I appreciate the way I feel, especially right now, because it feels like I've kind of lifted a little bit of a burden. Again, having a shared burden sometimes doesn't need to be carried. It just needs to be shared in a moment. And then the last thing is creating moments. I love creating moments between people that last a lifetime, that they remember back. And I like giving nicknames and doing these things. I didn't realize all these nuances until my dad died. I didn't realize how much of my dad I was. It's just so crazy. So the reason I bring that up is because we were, between my brother, my sister, my mom, we're all coming up with the nicknames my dad used to use. He wanted so many people to call him a different nickname, and he would call other people nicknames. He called me Buddy Boy. He called my brother Sonny Boy, and then he called my sister Buddy Girl, and then he wanted my mom to call him Chavalon. There were just so many things, and we're all debating. I'm like, well, what one did he use more? But you realize he had a nickname for everybody, but really what that meant is he created moments with people, and that's what stuck with him. And I am so grateful for that ability too. It's just amazing that he gave that to me. And I really didn't realize how much of an impact he had until he passed. And so you realize that more and more when somebody goes. And I'm absolutely grateful for that. And I miss my dad. It's just, I wish there were some times I can call him. Yeah. So that's why I didn't want to talk about my stuff. So,
and thank you for being authentic and vulnerable.
Yeah, so
you look really good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, hi, Claire. Claire said hi. But we're at the end of the show. We're about a minute away. Is there any last things that we want to share or feel or want to say since we're here? And at least Claire's watching.
Hi, Claire. Thanks for watching. I would just say, take that little simple practice if you're feeling down. If you happen to be feeling down, I'm going to go home and I'm going to write a list of 10 things that I'm grateful for in my life today. So.
And hang that shit up and stare at that every day you walk out.
Or write a new one every day.
It'd be really cool if you did a mural on your wall right by the door and you have that wall, just put a different word. Maybe a nice calligraphy or something. Yeah. But every time you walk out, it just carries with you. Yeah. I don't know, just an idea.
All those symbolic things are so meaningful. Yes, we'll get into that another time too.
So yes. So I want to thank everybody for joining us here at RCO Radio. We're going to be coming at you next week with Mary Van Alstyne, my esteemed and wonderful co-host at the show. But we'll be seeing you guys next week.